Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Into the Red Rabbit Hole. I'm Nighthawk, your host, and I'll be bringing our brother Dennis on here, Dennis Carroll, and we're going to get into the thick of things about all things vampiric or demonic. Okay, that's going to be our subject matter tonight on Into the Red Rabbit Hole. Let's get through the disclaimers and right to the meat of the topic. That's a bad thing to say, isn't it? To the topic. Oh God, I'm drinking coffee, not blood, everybody. So there you go. Copyright disclaimer is this channel may use some copyrighted material without specific authorization of the owner, but contends that it falls under the Fair Use Act. The Fair Use Act is actually the Copyright Act of 1976, Nighthawk High Strange's podcast channel, and all the podcasts on the channel declare fair use of any and all content to be used for the sole purposes of informing you, the viewing family, of information for criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, parody, and let's not forget the entertainment value. Per Title 17, Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, otherwise known as the Fair Use Act. Okay, let me get that, and we'll get in here and say hello to everybody. Let's see here. I should put something a little bit more presentable up on the screen for you all while we're doing this. Let me just take that off there. And no, I didn't mean me. I'm not presentable. Believe me. You can dress me up, but you can't take me out anywhere. That's for damn sure. All righty. I'm going to put a picture up that I actually don't know what to think about this picture, and I'm sure Dennis will have some theories on it. That's for sure. If I can find the picture, and let's see, it's not there. Okay, I don't have the picture apparently. What might I do it further down? Sorry, it's taking so long, everybody. It's been a long week. Yeah, here we go. This is the picture I'm talking about. Supposed trail camera picture. Look at them chompers. Bet you that guy's never been to a dentist. I don't know what to think about that, everybody. So let's bring Dennis on, and we're going to get into the topic of vampires. And I'm going to let Dennis introduce himself and kind of bringing the band back together, because Dennis and I used to be cohorts in a channel and doing a lot of shows and stuff together. So just check out the archives in Nighthawk High Strangers. You'll see a lot of good programs. So, and let me bring Dennis on. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, sir. I was just thinking there's a lot of water under the bridge, but the bridge is still there. It ain't washed out, you know. How you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what,
doing pretty good. Speaking of washouts, have you seen the news lately, though, Dennis, about some of the flooding going on?
I hear you. Hey, but we're getting older, but we just getting better. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Try anyway. I was looking at that picture there you had up. That picture you had up, that looks like a chupacabra. Mm-hmm. And you know, a chupacabra is sort of vampire-like, you know. I just wonder if that's what that is.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, I just found this on a camera on a trail camera. So I can't depict whether it's actually legitimate or not. I can't find any pixelation in it, so like it's been messed with. But this could be a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So God knows where the original is. So, but I don't know,
Yeah.
man. It kind of just threw me for a loop. I just don't think you could really fake something like that. But you probably can. You never know in today's technology.
Well, we've got so much out there with AI now. You really don't know what you're looking at anymore. But take a look at those teeth. I mean, that's a fearsome looking thing. I mean, definitely could do some damage with teeth like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. But like I say, here's the thing about AI, William, and all this other stuff's going on. What it does is it's working against researchers like us, and we don't know what's real and what's not real. We really can't even
Mhm.
comment on it hard anymore because of that. It's just been the
Right.
waters have been so muddied by this. We don't know where we're walking. But once in a while, you
This is
will
true.
find something that's kind of authentic. And here's another thing you got to look at, and like I say, you got to take into account is the story around it. The circumstances in which it was taken can tell you a lot. That's like that. I was on with Jessica Jones' show the other day, and she was doing a thing about that dog man thing in Ohio that was digging the grave up. The circumstances around that kind of gives it a little bit of an authenticity, the way it was taken. But some of these
Mhm.
images that you see, you don't
Right.
have any background on them. You don't know really what you're dealing
Right.
with. I have had, I know you have too, in the course of the career, and we've been in this a long, long time. We've had thousands of pictures brought to us and
Yeah, we
showed
have.
to us
Time for me to retire
for
pretty
our
soon.
for our opinion. But you want to give an opinion, but you can't really put your reputation on the line and say it's this or it's that because you don't really know its origin.
Right. Yeah, true. Very true. Well, let's go over to the comment section and the chat section of talk to our family and say hello to everybody. We got Corey in the house. Good to see you. Woo Riders in the house. Good to see you. Ozzy Sue. Great. We got in here. We've got. Oh, thank you, Ozzy Sue. Ozzy Sue, you didn't have to. Thank you though. That does help. That does help drastically. Um, let me see here. Audacious Amber, good to see you. Let's see. Abbott Hoffman, good to see you. All right. And I think that is everybody that's actually in the chat right now. So yeah, the subject that we're covering tonight, Dennis, I'm sure you covered it on your podcast too today, but we kind of just came up with this a little bit ago because of the video that I had sent you and to several other people on my friends list from Facebook. And good evening, John. Good to see you. Um, but that video is, I'm going to play it here in a little bit. And I want everybody to pay close attention to this person's hands and her teeth. Okay. And remember that this is a female that's in this photograph, but from what we can tell, may not be human. And if it is called
Well, what impressed me about it when you showed it to me, William, is like I say, it doesn't look like a setup. You can tell. You can
mm-hmm,
tell a lot of times when the fake setup thing going on here.
right,
This looks like it looks pretty authentic in that respect. It doesn't look like it's set up. But if you look at her hands, they are claws, not hands. They look more like claws, like animal claws or something. That was interesting to me. And if you look very closely at her pale, she has a very
yeah,
pale and very strange about this on my show tonight. I talked a little bit about vampires, the many different types of vampires that they are, And this looks like what we would generally call a daywalker. Vampires supposedly can come out in daylight, some vampires. So let me say this about that. They can come out in daylight, but not direct sunlight. Usually, it can be on a cloudy day, and that looks kind of an overcast day there. They can come out on a day like that, very much so. But in the daytime, their
it
power
does.
is very diminished. They're not very powerful like they are at night. They're more powerful at night. And here's another thing: if you'll look at that, if you watch that very closely, something else that stood out to me. She doesn't make eye contact. She's trying not to make eye
Right.
contact. And I'm gonna tell you what, the power of the vampire, a lot of its power is just where, like you and I have talked about so many times before, the eyes,
Yeah. The eyes are the window to the soul. That's what we've always
Uh-huh.
said, and we have always had this conclusion that whenever something has red eyes, it's definitely demonic in some nature, in some
Uh-huh.
form, and it's taking the form of something else to throw people off. And we know with the way the world is going today that there's more of a hidden war going on now than there is anything between the good and the evil in the world. And it's always been that way, but it just seems like it's really, really escalated over the last, I don't know, 10, 12 months. So, but
Yeah.
people are seeing these things, these beings everywhere. I mean, look at the demon face syndrome that they said is out there now. Where people are claiming to see demons. You know, so is it
And look at her.
is it just our
Look at her
imagination?
face. Look at her face, William. I mean, she looks like
Yeah,
a zombie looking thing. I mean, she looks like, I
yeah,
mean, not just sickly, but dead. Look at it. I mean, it's bad. Uh, you
yeah.
definitely got something going on here that ain't good. Absolutely. But that right
But
there
what if it
fits
was?
the persona of a daywalker.
Yeah. Now we actually know that people do spend lots of money on their teeth, and they do get them grind down. Some of them that are into goth and all that get them grind down to look like the part of a demon or a vampire or just something really evil. Why they would grind their teeth down to sharp bits is beyond me. Um,
Mhm.
but and we do know people suffer from albinism. Now, could this possibly be just an albino person coming out in the daylight?
Mhm. Well, like I said before, the daywalker is sort of like, and with so many different classifications of vampires. You got human vampires, you've got spirit vampires, you have demonic vampires, the undead, you have the elder vampires. They're almost like monsters. I mean, they don't look anything human. They look more like, very much like the Nosferatu in the old movie, the Nosferatu, or like that vampire in Salem's Lot, very much like that. Those are the elders. They call them elder vampires. They are the most powerful of the undead, supposedly. Very demonic, very highly powerful demonic. Then you got the lower demons that are the regular vampires, the undead vampires. Then you've got human vampires, which are people who have given themselves over to these vampire spirits, and a lot of goth people do that. Now she doesn't look too goth in this thing here. She would have more black on her. She was really far out goth, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. It depends. It might have been a rainy day and she had that coat on, or whatever the situation. She doesn't look like a goth in that respect,
Yeah.
or somebody that would be a member of a vampire society. She looks
Right.
more like the real thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the one thing that got me with this video that his name is Night God 333, and he's on. We see some of his videos online. They're like 50-second into a 2-minute video or a 5-minute video max in length, and you see so many of them online, and so much BS that's online, I should say, and the fake stuff, and the CGI and the AI, and you know, how can we discern that this wasn't somebody that was just trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes? I mean, the fact that she didn't make eye contact is the one dead giveaway, and she's trying to keep her hands hidden too. So I just, something inside me says this is definitely not somebody that suffers from um, the albino syndrome that it goes around, where they have the pale skin and the red eyes
Right.
and all that. Fingers look like somebody that was basically suffering from frostbite, and I just, it looks almost painful to have fingers like that.
Well, the daywalkers that I mentioned earlier, they're not as powerful in daylight. They're not going to want to interact with you as much. If this had been night, I'd like to see how that would have turned out. It might have been a whole different story. But in daytime, they're not going to interact, and that's what I kind of pick up from this. She's like not really wanting to interact and not wanting to say or speak to this person. She's trying to avoid them. That's why she's avoiding the eye contact and all that. I think that's what's going on here. I'd like to see the whole film. I'd like to see it from
Right.
beginning to end. But that's what I'm picking up on with that. That's what I'm picking up on.
Okay,
It's
well, I'm
very
gonna play
bizarre.
that
Very
video
bizarre.
one more time for everybody, and I apologize too because it's probably gonna cut the sound off because of some copyright disclaims. So there might not be any sound with it, like I don't hear anything on my end. But I'm gonna go ahead and play that clip again. It's only like 54 seconds long, but it shows a lot within that 54 seconds. And watch again. Watch her as she tries to look away from him when he tries to engage her, and watch the hands again. The hands and the mouth with the teeth are the giveaway.
Vampire. It does have very distinct claws. They use those. They can like rip you open with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they wanted to.
Well, yeah,
That's another aspect of vampires.
they'd be handy, very handy at
Have it.
the office.
Yeah. They call them the iron hand of the vampire. In other words, this is like a weapon. Those claws are like a weapon that they can use. They could probably, if they wanted to, decapitate you very quickly if they wanted to.
I
But
find
that
that
is very
very
strange.
fascinating. That is probably the most intriguing clip I've actually seen. Yeah, I would really love the city that it was filmed in, but he doesn't give any details on it. So, but I'm gonna do my research a little further and see if I can do some reverse
Yeah.
imaging searches to find out what city it was in, because we hear reports, Dennis, all the time from the southern
Well,
states of people experiencing vampires. Like the one young lady down in New Orleans, she, on right there on Bourbon Street, and she had one that had her basically hypnotized her enough to get her away from her friends inside the bar, and out there next to a building next to the bar, this guy appeared out of nowhere, and she said his eyes were really hypnotic in effect. But she didn't give details in the eyes. But there's been sightings of flying humanoids in New Orleans, and vampires in New Orleans, and you throw the Rougarou in there, we got a definite Scooby Dooby movie. So
Well,
I
the
just
number one, William,
the world is starting to show its.
The number one vampire city in the world would have to be New Orleans. Okay, I would think it has a very distinct and deep history of vampirism, and it would be one of the premier cities where you would run into something like that. Definitely, I've done a lot of the study of the history of New Orleans as pertaining to the vampires. Of course, you know Anne Rice, the very famous writer of the Interview with the Vampire, lived in New Orleans, and
Right.
she used a lot of the history of that city in a lot of her novels. But you had the Carter brothers, the two brothers that were vampires supposedly. You have Count Saint Germain that was supposedly for a while lived in New Orleans. He's supposed to be a vampire, an alchemist vampire. Um, then you have several other vampire things going on in New Orleans. You have a lot of stuff in there. And I advise anybody, if you want to do some research and you find vampires fascinating, you immediately go to the history of New Orleans, because it's got a lot of it. Of course, you got the voodoo too. You got a lot of other stuff. You got a lot of black magic, and I'll tell you, there is a distinct connection between the vampires and black magic. Okay, that's just the way that goes, because they're all plugged into demonic power, kind of thing, and that's definitely you know how that goes. But there's a lot of history of vampirism in New Orleans. Of course, there are other places in the world that have that. You know, Romania has that. You have London; it's also that way. Every major city in the world has a vampire society, or more than one. And we've talked about this before. The vampire societies, the gangs, and they are gangs. I said this tonight on my show earlier, that if you want to look at some of these vampire cults, they are like hell's angels on steroids. You know, that's what they are. These
Yep.
these guys are bad.
Yeah.
You have ritual murder,
No
you
offense.
have ritual abuse and torture, you have ritual suicide going on with this stuff. You got all kinds of freaky stuff going on with it.
Now, what do you think the odds are that these beings are working with so-called three-letter agencies in our government?
Oh, I don't doubt it one bit. The government's got a hand in every bit of this kind of stuff, this esoterical type stuff, and all this other things. So they're in it. Anything you and I both know this well, William. Anything that the government can weaponize, they're going to be in it, whatever it is. And I've talked about this before too, and you have as well, about the cryptid connection with a lot of this. I believe that there are some. I'm not saying all of it now, but I'm saying I believe that there are sometimes black
Yeah.
magic type interaction with some of these cryptids. Okay, I believe that there are bad
Yeah.
actors out there that can call forth some of these creatures from the darkness, you might say, for their own purposes. And we know that black magic has a direct connection with some of these cryptids. That like the big giant black, the big black phantom cats
Yeah.
you hear a lot
Yeah.
about. We know that's connected with it. The chupacabra may be connected with it, like that thing
Yep.
you showed at the beginning. You got a lot of this connection going. It's like you and I have said
Yep.
so many times before. You connect the dots, and you'll see the pattern. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the symbolism symbolisms negated. I've had on my show in the past talked about the vampire cults and all that, and some of the symbolisms I found in doing my research are the V with a circle around it in red, and usually blood red, and then the V with a line through it means that it's a feeding, that a vampire cult has had a feeding at that site. Now I know there's several other ways for the vampire community to mark their territory as far as that goes. They use scent, we know that, but
You
I'm
see
going to
that
put a list up
that
here
you
of
see that symbol, William,
some of
that
the
A,
other symbolism.
that upside down A with a line through it. If you invert that, it's an A with a line through it. Guess whose symbol that is?
Mm-hmm.
Asmodeus, the
Mm.
demon, the prince of hell. He's a prince of hell.
Oh yeah,
He's a very powerful
yeah,
demon,
that's right.
and he is
I forgot
connected.
all about
Here's
that.
the interesting
Yeah, I
thing.
forgot all about
Here's the interesting thing, William. He is connected to vampires. Okay, because vampire, that's the lust part of the vampire, the sexual thing with the vampires. He's connected with that. So it doesn't surprise me that his symbol, which is inverted, that you see there, standing, the vampires would use that
that.
as their symbol. But upright, it's Asmodeus. And
Huh.
we've
I
talked
never
about
even
that
thought about that.
before.
Never even dawned on me.
We
Yeah,
talked about that before about
yeah. We
their
brought out the
language of
demons and stuff.
symbolism. Yeah, the language
Yep.
of symbolism goes on and on. Yeah, it's something else. As even if you look down there, there's Anubis.
Yeah, this is.
I mean, the list goes on and on. You got the bat up there. You got, and all this is a
Yeah, yeah.
secret language, William. The symbolism is a secret language for them. This is how they know each other and the different families. They are families, very much like the mafia is set up. There are vampire families, cults, and they interact.
Yeah,
Some are higher up the ladder and some are lower
right.
on the ladder.
Well,
That's
what do
a
you think the
wild stuff.
best defense is to keep people safe in these times?
Yeah, I think some of these um, some of these cults, some of these families rule a lot. They're in a lot of government business areas, law firms, and all that. A lot of these families are connected that way, just like the mafia has infiltrated, all organized crime and all that. You got a lot of organized crime that ties into this as well. The tentacles of this is run so far and deep and into so many things. It's scary. No wonder the government would want to hook up with these guys. Okay, because they're pulling the strings in a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
yeah, yeah. True, very true. And we both have seen it. We've both been followed by three-letter agencies, I should say. But a lot of people don't realize that our own government has hidden symbolisms and stuff representing Satan or Baal or Asmodeus. I mean,
Mhm.
even the word NASA, has Satan in it. Okay, and I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it 100 more times until I'm dead. That you can't trust anything anymore with the government because in all their 3 and 4 letter agencies, I mean, clearly, it's a representation of Satan. And then again, you've got
Yeah.
the upside down A in the red or the invert V, you know, that's the V that we always say. So I just,
Here's another
there,
thing. Here's another thing you got to
there's so many
consider
other
too.
people now.
The vampire cults and the satanic cults, they're all the same thing, really. They're just coming at it in slightly different ways, you know what I'm saying? But they're all connected.
Right.
in that respect because they're all working toward a common goal. And that's what makes this so insidious and dangerous. You don't know where their member, it's like I said this on my show tonight too. Cult members are like psychos, serial killers. You could be living next door to one and never know it. The policeman that stops you on the side of the road could be a member of it. You just never know, and that's what makes all this, William, so downright dangerous. You don't know what you're dealing with, and it could be anywhere.
Yeah, true. True.
I think a lot of missing people.
That is definitely one word of precaution.
Because you and I both know that these things are big on human sacrifice and human slavery and all this other stuff. I'm not going to get into mentioning that because I don't want you to get shadow banned here. But there's a lot of this stuff going on, a lot of this trafficking going on. They've got a hand in all this stuff. Just like the Nazis did back in World War II. We know that. We know they were big in the occult. Why are they so deep into the occult? Because, like I said before, they're plugged into the demonic power. That's what's going on. That's where they get their power.
And then you got institutions. Yeah, you got institutions like CERN out there that are saying they're opening up portals to hell, which gives you another demonic tie into the whole global incidences, around the whole
and
globe.
Look at the look at that statue out.
There's so many places that it.
Look at that statue outside the UN, William. That's statue of the beast. The Antichrist is what it is, but it's some kind of a monster. What's that doing outside the UN? And that's like that airport. Where's that airport at? Is it Denver? Well, it's got all that weird stuff going on. What's all this symbolism about?
Yeah, Denver
It's telling a story.
Yeah, they've got. Yeah, the Denver airport, everybody, I don't know if you know, but has a blue horse statue with red glowing eyes, and it's called Lucifer. And the original artist or craftsman that built it was actually impaled by one of the legs of this huge statue while he was working on it, and his family took over the finishing of it. But yeah, he got impaled with one of the legs of the horse one day, and they call it Lucifer because of that. Because at night, when you drive up to the airport, all you see are its red glowing eyes. So, and it's like Dennis and I have always said, red glowing eyes, stay away from it because it's demonic.
Oh, yeah. And that's true what the Movie Writer says there. The Nazis were deep into the space program. We know that. Look at Jack Parsons, who was a disciple of who? Aleister Crowley. He was a big rocket scientist. He was the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And they still celebrate Jack Parsons' birthday every year at NASA on Halloween. You got a direct occult tie into that right there. That's just one thing. That's just one example. You got a lot going on with that. And I'll say this too. The really strange thing about all of this,
I want to apologize to everybody.
The patterns.
I want to apologize to everybody too. Yeah, and Dennis. Yeah, there is currently going on right now, and I see it's interfering with our signals and stuff on the computer, on the internet. There's currently going off right now solar flares, and it's classified as the level 4, and it's really they're expecting it to be something bad, or at least they're making it out to be something bad. But we're actually experiencing interference because of that tonight. So just so you know, bear with us. We're going to try and get through this podcast at least for another 30 minutes to discuss this subject some more. And, if you lose us, then we'll just have to come back another day and treat you to another podcast. So,
yeah. That always seems to happen when we get on certain subjects, doesn't it?
vampires having. Yeah, yeah. Well, they predicted this solar storm, but they're saying it's supposed to be pretty bad. So.
Yeah, I went outside tonight to see if I
Now,
could see the
as
northern
far as
lights.
vampires go, yeah, I'm still going to do that because up here it's going to be probably the best time is going to be sometime between midnight and 4 a.m. is what my son researched. So
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, a lot of I'm gonna tell you something about solar flares. Okay, the interesting thing about solar flares, they put a lot of energy in the atmosphere, and the certain forces of darkness like that. They like that more energy. You got more paranormal activity too with stuff like that as well. You kind of watch out for that
right,
when you have these big solar flares.
right.
But
Ozzy Sue says
getting
that
back
they're
to
planning on
vampires,
taking
getting back to the
down
vampire cults.
all of our communication.
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to the vampire cults,
Yeah,
what I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, there is some interesting. I read a story about a New Orleans woman. She had a boutique down there in New Orleans, and it's called the Vampire Boutique. And she said she actually had a real vampire show up in there one night. And he walked around looking. She said, I know he was a vampire. I mean, he just looked, he was an older man. She said, I got these vampire vibes off of this guy, you know. And said he walked around, he asked for a certain book. And the book he asked for was the history of the vampire. Matter of fact, I happen to have that book in my library, too. Anyway, he asked for that book. She said, no, I don't have that book, you know. So he turned around and walked out and left. Said about the time he left, her husband came in that door. And she asked her husband, said, what do you think about that guy? He said, what guy? I didn't pass anybody coming in. He didn't pass anybody coming in. Said you had to pass him. There was only one door. And he went out just right before you had to see him. She said, no, I didn't see anybody. So she said, I have a feeling I'll see this guy again one day. And she said, by the way, I've got the history of the vampire in my books now, in case he shows up again. But you have some weird stuff like that. And like, you know, what happened with me with the girl out in the cemetery. And then that other case that I had, where that woman come to me thinking that her mother was coming back as a vampire. That was weird. Whenever you do any kind of paranormal research and investigation, it seems like you run into these vampire things, whether they're the vampire spirit, demonic spirits that are taking people's energy, or whether it's the actual vampires that take blood, or whatever the situation is. Seems like you're going to run into it, but that I think, William, is number one thing is the vampires are directly connected to the demonic, no matter which way you look at it. That's a big connection.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Now, as far as the demonic connection is concerned, Lilith was actually the first in the Garden of Eden, and it's said now that Lilith is immortal because she drinks the blood of normal humans, whether they're willing or not. So the whole Lilith connection to the whole thing is amazing too. And then you have that woman in France that used it to take and drain the blood out of some of her young maids and bathe in the blood. What is this fascination with blood?
I think they get some kind of spiritual power out of it. I think it's because, you know, as the Bible clearly says, the blood is the life. And I think a lot of the life essence that we would die without blood. I mean, blood is very essential. And I think a lot of our life essence is in that blood. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is what draws them to it. There's that mystical connection, with the blood. And you and I
Mhm.
both know certain dark things, certain dark rituals require one ingredient, blood. They always ask for blood, whether it's your blood
Yeah,
or somebody else's blood. We know that. That's what a big requirement of it is. So whenever you take blood, draw blood, or spill
yeah,
blood, there's a big spiritual thing going on there with that. You know?
yeah. Even in my own ceremonies, being Native American. Oh, thank you, Kathleen, for that super sticker. Thank you very much, dear. That's greatly appreciated. But even with my own culture and our ceremonies that we do, I even give flesh offerings and stuff too. Especially during Sundance season. Being Native American, so it's like all of these everything is like connected as far as I'm concerned, and it's all about us connecting the dots, and it always has been about us connecting the dots, Dennis. You know that. And as soon as we figured out with the red eyes, and as soon as we figured out the connection between Lilith and the vampires, and Lucifer and the vampires, and then the vampires and the red-haired giants are connected, which Eric and I, went even further on that on the show one time, to into the royal family in the UK and that bloodline. So, being red-haired. Um, there's so many avenues you can go with this whole conspiracy thing. And my big thing about the whole vampire thing is I've seen the symbolisms. I've seen and heard reports of people almost being abducted by these beings. Um, but how the one thing that always gets to me is they want to center around older parts of cities, and older parts of towns, or small boroughs and stuff. Um, Usually, there were reports in coming out of New Orleans, about in the early 1800s, they had to bring over women from over in Europe, to marry some of the guys that were fishing and all that off the coast in New Orleans. And these young women would bring these huge chests, you know,
Yeah.
and nobody ever knew what was inside those things, but they stored them in an old building in that was like a monastery building, and
Yeah, they were nuns.
they used to
Yeah.
have reports of this yeah, they would have reports of this being, at night, coming out and getting out on the ledge of the window and just jumping and flying away, just like Superman. You know, I just wonder
A
if the
lot of those,
abilities that they are that they are given in the
yeah,
movies is actually legitimate.
a lot of those women came from some of the older families in Europe. And you and I know these bloodlines go way back. They're very old, and that's where all the money's at nowadays. A lot of these older bloodlines. And I'll tell you why the bloodlines are so distinct. They sign blood contracts
Mm-hmm.
with the forces of darkness. Okay, and when you ever listen to this, here's the interesting part. When you sign a blood contract with the Prince of Darkness, okay, it's not just your blood; it's your whole line on down to 7 generations, like that he owns a part of. In other
Yeah,
words, you sign off everybody under you that's gonna be born. Okay, that's just the way that works, and that's why you have these family curses and you have all these things that crop up. If you go into blood contracts, you're not just doing your own soul out; you're giving other people's souls as well with that. That's just the way that works. But I think a lot of these vampires, especially in New Orleans and these areas, these vampire families and cults are tied into this old European bloodline. You know, you've got the Creoles and the Cajuns
Right.
and
William.
yeah, you got all that going on. You know.
Yep. Yep. And then you have William Tompkins, who came out and said that the abductions and harvesting and eating of children by the Draco reptilians is Illuminati also. So apparently the Illuminati, as I like to call them, the Illuminati, are the ones in charge of everything.
Well, look, you know,
pretty much.
It's like we've talked about this before, William. These people are playing a God game. They want immortality. I mean, let's just say right now, William, if you had all the money in the world you wanted, all the power you wanted, but you got to die in a few years and leave it, that's not going to sit good with you. You want to get immortality too, so you can enjoy your power and your money and all that other stuff that goes with it. And that's what these guys are after. And think about one of the great ways to get immortality would be to what? Become a vampire. Think about it. Even if it takes selling your soul, they don't care. Long as they get what they want in return, which would be immortality. So that they can have, let me say this, if you get immortality along with the money and the power and everything else, you are a god on this earth. That's just the way they look at it. And they are wanting to play the God game. They are wanting to be gods. And they're going to do that no matter what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. So they definitely think that they're godlike because they're using normal everyday human beings as cattle, basically, and that's pretty much it. In fact, it leads me to go on to say, you know, that's probably one of the reasons why our certain border is wide open, to make the herd
well, we
a
are.
bigger herd. So
they consider us that way, William. They consider us to be cattle, you know, because there's so much. Here's their attitude. They're so much smarter, better, stronger, richer than we are. We're just cattle to them. That's what we are. And you know, and a lot of these vampire satanic cults and all that we know go along with Hollywood and all these other places, they're actually doing the worst taboo of all, which is cannibalism. They're doing that. We know that people are being eaten.
You know, I remember.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember hearing the story from Mel Gibson about Christopher Walken's, and how Mel Gibson in his early years was going to these Hollywood parties all the time, and he went there one time to a party that was hosted by Christopher Walken, and he said across the street from where the party was, on top of this roof, this building, this big roof, was in red neon numbers 666. And he said it was plain as day. Everybody noticed it, but they didn't say anything. And he said, as soon as Christopher Walken came out, he floated out of his room through French doors and came down about 12 feet and floated across the floor and sat down next to Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson looked at him and he said, Christopher Walken had this look of like, yeah, I did that on his face. And he said that they, all he wanted to talk about was it is to be, you know, basically immortal. Now, does that make Christopher Walken a bloodsucker? Yeah, it very well could be, or he could be demonically possessed. So,
yeah,
I don't
true.
know.
And you know, it's just like that film you showed tonight of that young lady who woman. I use young loosely here. She could be a whole lot older than she really looks like. But here's the interesting thing we've got to consider. We got to consider this, William. And you know very well what I'm about to say. Whatever is on the inside of you, whether it's light or dark, okay, whatever your true spiritual nature is, sooner or later it's going to show up on the outside. That's just the way that works.
Yeah.
And you look at some of these people, they don't even look normal. You know what I'm saying? There's something about them that tells you that what's on the inside is dark, very dark, you know?
Yeah. Now, we're getting here to the close to the hour mark, and I'd like everybody to know a little bit more about where they can go to get your books and stuff, and see what you're going on with your podcast channel, if you would please. We'll get that done, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up as much as we can. And I want to thank everybody in the chat for being here. Cecilia, good to see you. Girl with a gong, I went to say hello to you, but I got cut off. So nice to see you.
Okay, well, my books are available on Barnes and Noble
John,
and
good
Amazon.
to see you.
Yeah, you can just look it up, Dennis Carroll, and you will find my books. My podcast is Hunting the Shadows every night, Wednesday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I also have Paranormal Point of View, which I did tonight. It comes on every Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. And I'd appreciate if you haven't, subscribe and join me on there. And we have a lot of
Tracy and I
interesting
watch you
discussions.
religiously. So.
Yep. But also, I have a website if you want to contact me for anything.
Awesome.
You can contact me on my website, DennisWCarroll.com. And that's it. Not too hard to remember, I hope.
All right. Yeah. Everybody in the chat, Christopher Walken's always kind of creeped me out a little bit too in the movies. He always played the bad, dark, evil type of a villain, not even like a human villain. I mean, he literally played Satan in one of the movies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's definitely a demonic connection and vampiric connection to Christopher Walken. I definitely believe it. So, but everybody in the chat, I want to thank you all for being here. Come back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for the Morning Brew Show, where we talk about everything paranormal, supernatural, and cryptid. And everybody have a great night. And Ozzy Sue, thank you again for the kindness and the gift. That's greatly appreciated. And Kathleen, thank you too. That's greatly appreciated. So God bless everybody. Keep everybody in your prayers, because the way the world's going today, it's not good. Okay, so let's remember, instead of getting mad at one another, let's pray with one another. Okay, so thank you, everybody.
It's like I always say,
Dennis, thank you very much, brother, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
And
we're all in this
I
together.
will see you.
Take care.
Yep. Take care, Dennis. All right, everybody. That was phenomenal. Thank you again to everybody for the super stickers. There's so much to this subject matter, and you can't cover it all within an hour. But I have to limit myself because of my medical things going on. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody. All right. And God bless you all. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay. Right here. Take care.